Right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody to the Startup Grind Columbia Chapter's first virtual monthly event. Thank you all for participating and being here. And we hope that this will not be the first and last time that you join us. A couple of things on a housekeeping note. We do have a lot of people on, and the world of the internet is being pushed in terms of capacity. So there may be some connection issues from time to time that come up. We're hoping that everything will work just fine. But in case you drop off or you get cut out for some reason, please feel free to hop back in. For the fireside chat portion, everybody will be muted, but over on the right-hand side of everybody's screen is an area for chat and where you can post questions that Ryan and I will be able to address as we go along. So those are the couple housekeeping things that I have. Anybody on my team have any other housekeeping that I may have forgotten? Okay.
Go ahead, Patrick.
All right. Well, tonight we are doing our best to include all of the elements that we typically have in an in-person event, except that we are going to be doing our networking and connecting and sharing virtually, obviously. And this is a new experiment and a new venture for us. So I hope that you all will bear with us in case anything that does go wrong probably will go wrong, and we'll get it fixed just as soon as we can. We are going to be virtual until the crisis passes and life returns to some semblance of normalcy, and we can't wait until we can get back to being in everyone's physical presence. Our in-person events are held at the Maryland Innovation Center. They are one of the chapter's founding strategic partners, and I just want to give a big shout out to them and thank them for all of their help and their support. Obviously, I don't think I have to tell anybody that we're living through some rather unprecedented, uncharted, and anxious waters right now. Everybody is worried, they're afraid, they're nervous, they're anxious. We're all trying to figure out what in the devil's going to happen over the next couple of months. The soothing thing is that we're all in this together. And part of Startup Grind's mission is to be here as a resource for every one of us. Not just during the crisis, but also we're here for the infinite game. We're playing the long game. So that I'm hoping that once we get back to normal, all of you will be regular participants in the chapter. Our goal here is to serve as a place where our entrepreneurial community can come together and receive education, find inspiration and encouragement, and get connected to the people and the resources that we need in order for us to continue down our entrepreneurial journey. For those who don't know about Startup Grind, we are the largest global community of entrepreneurs with just over 3.5 million members in 650 chapters and 140 countries
meeting.
Around the
my
world.
Networking meeting.
We have helped literally hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs on their journey, everything from education all the way through to helping them find and acquire funding and to help them build highly successful businesses. And our foundation, our community is built on three very fundamental core values. We're here to give first, don't take. We're here to help others before we help ourselves. And we're here to make friends, partnerships, and develop collaborative relationships, not just make contacts and be a networking organization and practice the traditional zero-sum games. So that being said, I always start and end every meeting by asking you to keep the following 4 questions in mind. Question 1 is, what did you learn this evening? 2, who did you meet and interact with? 3, what do you need? And 4, how can we as a community help? And we'll get into that again at the end of the event. What I would like to do is to introduce and thank each one of my management team, starting with Ellen Stokes, Laura Azam, Patrick Rockhill, Josh Massey, and Sean Sutherland. They are all going to be playing a role in this evening's event, and I want to thank you all, and please everybody give them a virtual round of applause. Okay, another couple of announcements that I want to bring you up to date on. We are planning, starting later this week, to hold 2 weekly virtual Startup Grind meetup events. Very similar to what you're going to see tonight, but they're going to be focused more on serving as a platform and a community forum for everybody to get together and network virtually, talk about problems, issues, and concerns, and we're going to do our best to help find the resources that the community needs to move forward. We are also probably going to pull in some subject matter experts. We're still working on that, but we hope that we'll hold the first event probably Friday sometime, and the chapter team will be sending out those announcements here in the next 48 hours, hopefully. If you haven't joined our Startup Grind community, I ask you to please do so. And you can do so by going out to our chapter website and sign up for our newsletter. That will get you on our mailing list, and you then will be fully informed of everything that's going to be happening. Coming up, we've got some interesting events. April will be a focus on innovation at Maryland colleges and universities, and what we can do as a community to act as mentors for them. May is going to be how to get significant exposure in press and PR without breaking the bank. And that's going to be a panel discussion with Technically Baltimore, the Baltimore Business Journal, and City Biz List editors. June is typically our Global Women Leaders in Tech Month, and we're going to be we're going to be featuring a panel of women leaders, and we're going to focus on opportunities and problems that exist in the world today for them. And then I'm hoping by the time we get to July, we will be back in person, and July is our big global summer party and startup showcase. So that's just a few announcements. Let's see. The final thing is that we are working to open up our chapter Slack workspace as an additional forum for the community to be able to stay in touch with one another and interact. We're working out the final details and the logistics. That information will be posted and sent out in the next couple of days as well. I think that's all the announcements. So that being said, I would like to introduce Mr. David Gertler. David is the co-founder and CEO of Treble. Treble and Startup Grind have been strategic partners with one another. I think now, David, what, almost 18 months or more?
Yeah, about that.
And we signed on with Treble because they have a platform and they have a corporate culture and philosophy that mirror the values and the mission of Startup Grind exactly. And so we've been serving as a beta test organization and early adopter for them, and we're going to be using the Treble platform and David's meeting manager function this evening. And with that, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everybody. This is David. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, right? Get a couple of good thumbs. Excellent. I hate to go into 20 minutes later and realize that I was on mute, right? As Chris said, we're thrilled to be partnering with Startup Grind. We're going to be providing the introductions to make this a little more interactive for everybody. So in a few seconds, I'm going to share my screen and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. First, what I was hoping to do is just highlight a success that we've had recently. Since last time we all got together, there was a really good success. Lauren introduced Nate to Catherine as a potential client. So I know Catherine is a member. I don't know if she's on the call tonight, but she was registered for it and she's been very active in this community. So keep doing good things, keep making recommendations. What makes this a community is people helping each other. And so what we're going to do is make it easy for you to help each other simply by letting each person introduce themselves. Because of the volume of people, we have about 45 people on the call today. I'm going to call on you individually, give everybody about 25 seconds to answer 3 questions. And it'll look sort of like this, and I'll go first to model it. For those of you who haven't been through one of the Treble meeting manager exercises in the past, it's actually pretty simple. If you haven't already, please update your profiles, because not only will be able to do this online today, but also throughout the days, evenings, weekends, or if somebody says something that's interesting to you or somebody that you want to follow up with, you can jump onto Treble, you can find that person's profile, you can reach out to them, try to help them, etc. So as each person goes, please mute yourself, be respectful. I'll call on you in an order that I have on a spreadsheet on the side. Please listen actively, take notes if you need to, think about what the people are saying in terms of what they're looking for, what their backgrounds are, so you can follow up. What we like to say is that the magic happens offline. After the phone call, after this conference call, reach out to a couple of people that have common interests or might have things that you can help them with, or vice versa. All right.
Okay. Thank you, David. Well, I hope all of you had just a brief glimpse of what Treble is all about. This is just kind of a high-level overview, but this is one of the things that we do every event is provide a way for people to get to know one another other than just sitting here shaking hands. And one of the things that David didn't mention about the platform is not only by going out and joining the Startup Grind Columbia organization, you also have the ability to expand your presence out. And David, shoot me if I'm wrong, but you have the ability to expand your network out to other organizations who are using the Treble platform as well.
Great.
Okay, tonight, obviously, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. Tonight's original theme was, beyond duct tape, rubber bands, and super glue, product design, development, management, and engineering. We are very fortunate to have a friend and a colleague within the entrepreneurship community in the Mid-Atlantic. His name is Ryan Sears, and Ryan is the driving force and the founder of Launch Annapolis, which is a startup community down in our state's capital of Annapolis. And he is also the founder and CEO of not new, he's been around, they've been around now for quite a while, of the accelerator called Founder Track. And they have positioned themselves to be a very unique and interesting and beneficial and strategic accelerator for companies that want to basically accelerate their growth. So with that having been said, I would like to introduce everybody to Ryan. Ryan, say hello to everybody.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to jump in, and it's wonderful to hear from everybody and see who's out there. You know, it's tough in these virtual environments to get to know people, and so that was awesome to kind of go around the horn and meet everybody. So thank you for that.
And the reason why I'm saying that tonight's a little bit different is because as this last week has progressed and things can continue to get worse and worse and become even more unpredictable for everybody, Ryan and I realized that what's probably more important this evening is not so much to spend a lot of time on product engineering, design, UX, UI, and management, but to spend time talking about what we can do. The first and foremost is to listen to the community and what you need and what you want. Listen to your concerns, your fears, your complaints, and the unknowns, because I know I've had many calls within the startup grind community, and people are very scared, quite honestly. And Ryan and I have been, and I know many of us, particularly those who are what I'd call closer to the boomer age, have been through several external crises similar to this in the past. And we hope that we'll be able to tap into our collective thinking and collective power to help one another with tools, tips, and tricks, and resources to be able to make it through to the other side. That being said, what I would like to do is to, Ryan, ask you if you would give us a high-level overview of your background, your experience, your life growing up. Give us the good, the bad, the ugly.
Sure. Thanks. And yeah, I mean, these unprecedented times, you know, it is important to draw on that experience from the past and folks that have been through similar experiences from a business perspective and a life perspective. So I'm happy to jump into that and take the topic away from me and really turn to the community and be as helpful as possible. And, you know, I mean, first, I'd really like, just in regards to the situation before I jump into my background, I mean, you know, I've been thinking a lot about the healthcare professionals out there, and actually no one that recently became ill. And the healthcare professionals that are on the front line are really putting themselves out there and kind of risking their own health to help people. So big thank you to them. If you are on this call and you're one of those people, or you're a family member of one of those people, thank you for your support. So my background, I grew up here in Annapolis. I studied economics at Towson University. And then I was a real estate operator. I was a real estate developer for about 8 years. We did 400 transactions in the Baltimore area. I realized, and I did that during the market downturn. So I went through the upswing in the real estate market, and then back down through the downturn, and then back out the other side. And so I can draw on a little bit of that personal experience, Chris, and we can talk a little bit about that. And what it was like to run a real estate company during the worst real estate bubble in history. I realized at a certain point I wanted to do a tech startup and didn't want to be a real estate developer. And so I did a tech startup, and I raised capital here in Maryland, and I participated in the Accelerate Baltimore program and incubated at 1776 and Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. And so I really was engulfed in the startup ecosystem in Maryland and also around the country. And during that time, I also started a group called Launch Annapolis, which at first was just a couple entrepreneurs getting together to see what resources were available in the state's capital. And it's grown to over 3,000 members. We're now a nonprofit that connects entrepreneurs with resources, and we've hosted over 100 events. And my startup, as I launched it, I did the product development and raised the capital and sold into the market and was the chief everything officer, if you will. The product was used in the real estate space by companies like Jones Lang LaSalle, CBRE, and IP ended up at a company out in California. And when I round down my role, I really leaned into ecosystem development. And one of the things that we did was start an accelerator called Founder Track. And I started that business with Jeff Mund, who at the time ran a venture capital firm. And so we teamed up with a venture capital firm, the Maryland Tech Council, and Launch Annapolis to launch this accelerator called Founder Track. And yeah, I've been living the dream. I get to wake up every day and start and work with startup founders and invest in companies and support them. And one thing that's really unique about our style of mentorship is that we like to jump in and be on the front lines with the company. And so I like to jump in and help on the product side and the marketing side. And that's really been a passion for me. And Founder Track's unique proposition is that it's a free accelerator and it's founder friendly, meaning we take no equity and there's no cost to the entrepreneur. And so that attracts a lot of top talent and companies that have already been really successful. And a typical cohort, it's not unusual to have 3 or 4 of the companies come with exited founders or even multiple exits, or companies that are further along in their life cycle. And so it's a really interesting thing when you take that filter off of kind of taking 7% of your company just to walk through the door or just to get a $100K check. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about my story and background, Chris.
And I know that you and I have been working for a while to find ways that we can continue to collaborate and partner and play off of each other's strengths to help grow the Maryland ecosystem. So go back. You were born and raised in Annapolis. Was there anything in particular during your early formative years that, as you look back on it, gave you kind of the spark to possibly pursue being an entrepreneur versus just being an employee someplace?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about the spark. Neither of my parents were entrepreneurs or anything like that. I never was a big school guy. Sounds weird to admit that. But for me, I always try to operate outside of the system or outside of the bounds and thought outside of the box kind of naturally. And so I think early on that might have been a detriment, but later on it served me pretty well.
Did you play a lot of sports, do a lot of outside activities as a kid and, through high school and college?
I did, yeah, and still to this day. So I played soccer. I grew up wakeboarding, skiing, mountain climbing, mountain biking, baseball, basketball. Pretty much every sport I could had time for. So yeah.
Okay. So, with your tech startup, kind of walk us through what problem or what issue did you see in the market that you felt you could solve with your startup?
Sure. So I was in the real estate space and I made a product in that space. The idea actually came from a friend of mine who became my co-founder and business partner, Chris Dale. And Chris had this idea for doing a site survey in a digital way. And if you're not in real estate, basically what that means is companies often go look at properties, at real estate they want to purchase, or they might go through their own property to calculate capital expenditures or feasibility for selling the property. and they used to go through the building with a clipboard and a pen and a pad and rolled up plans and a camera and a measuring tape and all these things. And we thought we could replace that manual process with a digital process. And I had experienced this problem firsthand in evaluating properties. I'd done site surveys on hundreds of properties myself, and my company had done thousands of site surveys. And so I was very familiar with the problem. And so, you know, when you're that intimate with a problem and it kind of fit my goals to launch a company, it made sense to dive in and make it happen.
So walk us through a little bit about the very early stages of that company.
Sure.
So, you know, we are all somewhat in the same position, and that is, you know, when you're just coming out of the ground before you have $1 of revenue, you're basically chief everything officer and chief anything officer.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get the kind of momentum you needed to get to first revenue?
Yeah. So I still carry this lesson with me early on in my real estate business before the tech startup. There were times that we launched services and we created a product even that nobody ended up purchasing from us. We were trying to be innovative and come up with stuff. And I had my fair share of creating ideas that didn't work out. And so when I got to the startup, I knew right away that I had to validate the market, that there really was a market for this. And it wasn't just me. You know, I knew I had the problem, but I needed to make sure other people did. And by trade, I'm a UX designer and a self-taught coder. And so I designed the interface for the software. We actually drew it out, and I spent all weekend. I stayed up all weekend creating a clickable prototype. So there was no code. It was about, I'm going to say 12 or 14 screens linked together that looked like real software. So when I showed it to people on the iPad, this was in 2013. When I showed it to people on the iPad, this is when the iPad had just come out or not too long ago, so it was still cool. I guess it's still cool, but you know, and I took this around to all these people I knew in the industry, and I said, look, it can do this, and here's how the software would work. And I showed them this clickable prototype, and got a lot of interest. I got letters of intent to purchase the software signed, and that was my first indication of kind of that I knew I had something real, and that allowed me to garner the resources I needed to develop the software, get the partners, and actually the first customers were investors. So I got angel investor and a customer all in one swoop.
Okay. Obviously, being a startup, an early stage company, you go through all kinds of problems, you go through all kinds of issues. And we're sitting here today in the middle of a crisis that we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how severe it's going to be, and we don't know what the situation is going to look like over the next several weeks. Tell us a little bit about the crises that you've gone through as an entrepreneur, whether it's in the real estate company with you know, your tech startup, etc. And tell us some of the lessons that you've learned and the takeaways that you've come away with from those experiences.
Sure. Yeah, and this really is it's unprecedented in the nature of this crisis, but it has a lot of similarities to other financial crisis or cultural or economic crisis. And so, yeah, just going back to my real estate days, as I mentioned, I started the real estate company in 2005, and we did really well. And from 2005 to 2007, the company grew like you wouldn't believe. That was during the kind of the peak of the real estate market. You know, I guess looking back on it, I learned about macroeconomic cycles. Even though I was an economics major, I learned a firsthand lesson in the streets of what a macroeconomic cycle is. But more specifically, just being in real estate and going through that dip and then coming out the other side, you know, taught me a lot about how to handle adversity. And there were just countless, I mean, countless periods of time that were extremely stressful. I would say at least 5 times that I can remember, and probably more. It was Thursday, and I didn't have enough for payroll on Friday, and we had a staff of 15 people. I guess that was our staff. Just everybody that we were responsible for paying for. We would spend a top line expense for us was probably 60 or 80,000 a month. And so this wasn't only affecting me and my business partner, and it was affecting our employees and their families, and they were relying on us. And so it's really stressful. And so, I think the biggest lesson that I learned, Chris, and I think this is really relevant to today's crisis. I mean, I've spent all week, this last week, and even before that, but especially this last week, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with entrepreneurs, people that own brick and mortar businesses, as well as startups. I mean, there's people laying off half their staff. 80% of their staff are considering shutting down or trying to figure out what they're going to do. And so I would say when you're making some of these difficult decisions about whether to pivot into a new market or launching your business or furloughing people, laying them off, one of the best things you can do for yourself is take care of your mental health. If you're in a position where you're sleeping 2 hours a night, or you are really stressed out, or you're making decisions based on fear or emotion, you're going to make poor decisions. And I learned that lesson the hard way. And it wasn't until I started taking care of myself and working less hours. There was a point in time where I was working 80, 90 hours a week. And it's actually detrimental to the business because you're hurting the business by making poor decisions. And so one of the things that I practice and I tell entrepreneurs now is that look at the decisions that you're making and make sure they're not based on fear, and make sure you're not in an emotional state. If you are, you've got to delay the decision and try to collect as much information as you can. As entrepreneurs, we're always in a low information environment, right? We're trying to take in as much information as possible, and we're trying to make the best decisions possible. One of the ways that you can do that is with first principles. And this is a technique I think more recently has become more popular. It was originally put out by Aristotle, the philosopher. He has a book called First Principles, but I think Elon Musk has being quoted as using this. There's a great interview where Kevin Rose is interviewing Elon Musk for there's like a 3-minute interview on YouTube. You can look it up. But essentially what you're doing is you're breaking down the things that you know to be truthful, the things that are absolute facts in the smallest atomic level, and then reasoning up from those facts. And that's a great way to kind of a mental model for how you might go about examining where to go and what to do in the market. And so if you can kind of analyze that. The second thing, Chris, I'll say is you've really got to think about your cash flow. This is really critical right now. So, for us, we had to make some really tough decisions during that time about what bills to pay, which bills to pay, and what we should do about our employees and making sure we can keep them employed. And there was times where we didn't pay our rent. I mean, in this environment, I think they've staved off evictions. But we had to make some tough decisions and choose which bills to pay, and we really kind of looked at that critically. And so, to the extent that you can keep cash in the bank right now, you might have to reduce your services. We all get all these reoccurring expenses on our personal accounts as well as our business account, all these services that we pay for on a reoccurring basis. It's time to look at all those and see which ones we can bring in house and conserve that cash and keep it in the bank so you can keep your business alive until the dust settles here a little bit and we can see what we got. And that was really critical. For us, we went through a really difficult period of about, I would say, 12 to 18 months, that was really, really difficult as the market was settling down. And we came out the other side. We ended up hiring more people, and we ended up offering another line of services. We saw a great opportunity in the market actually as it shifted. And so the third thing I would say is think outside the box. Look at, you know, where the opportunities are, and look for ways that maybe this could be, you could turn this challenge into an opportunity. And that's what we did. And we were able to come out the other side with a stronger company. So that was my experience. And those are some of the things that I'm looking for now in this market.
And I will say to everybody that's on the call, please feel free to go ahead and type in any questions that you may have for Ryan and I into the chat box, and we will start addressing those as we go along. You know, Ryan, you talked about the stress, the fear, and particularly the mistake of making decisions based on fear as opposed to facts. And I know I had that problem many times. And the problem, or the decisions that I made based on fear were always the worst possible decisions that I could make. And you know, there were a couple of things that I learned along the way. One is that no matter, how does the expression go? Even though Rome may be burning down around you, don't panic. And I have found that the more that I practice, you know, internal meditation, internal calmness, getting myself focused and relaxed, that I'm able to stave off a lot of those feelings that we get in the moment when we're in crisis. The other trick that I learned, and it took me quite a while to do this, and that is to really think and stay focused and be present in the moment, in today, and deal with only those things that you can reasonably accomplish and deal with today. You know, we all as humans have a knack of either one, attempting to live in the past and kick ourselves for all the stuff that happened in the past. Well, if you really stop and think about it, the past is the past. There isn't anything you can do about it. And tomorrow isn't here yet, and the future's not here yet. So the only thing you really have that's underneath your control is right now, every minute of every day. And if you can just focus on that 1 minute, 1 hour at a time, it will help relieve that stress and pressure and anxiety. At least it did for me. So that's a tip and a trick that I learned back when this was back in the late 80s, my first startup. You know, we had a great run up until roughly about 2000, and then literally overnight, we went from being one of the only players in the market to having over 60 competitors. And all the value, all the profit, everything went right out the window. We were competing on lowest price. People were selling products for less than their cost, just hoping that they would make it up in volume. And you know, yeah, I had those situations where I had a staff of like 8 or 10, and I was looking at a Thursday night and not being able to make payroll in the morning. And so I went in the next morning, and the other thing I wanted to mention is there's nothing better than being yourself, being human, being honest, and being transparent with everybody that you deal with. And everybody is going to always give us the benefit of the doubt if they know that we're being honest and we're doing our best to look out for them. And so one of the things I did is I walked in the next morning. I said, guys, I'm not taking payroll, you know, until we get this turned around. And instead of laying people off, I'm going to ask everybody if you'll cut back from from 5 days a week to 3 days a week and take a couple of days as unpaid vacation, for lack of a better term. And I was amazed at how everybody rallied around that one little thing that I was able to do. And they literally became people who would walk through fire to help the company stay afloat until we were able to find a solution. So those are just a couple of things that I wanted to throw out that I know from my background I've done. So are there questions out there that people have about where are you? You know, what's going on in your head? What are you getting squirrely about? Is it staying at home? Is it sheltering in place? Is it the lack of connectivity with others and the personal one-on-one interaction? What problems are you having right now today in your business? Is it employees? Is it cash flow, etc.? Go ahead and put your questions and thoughts in the chat box, and Ryan and I will, we'll do our best to address those. You talked, Ryan, about taking care of yourself, and that's not just mentally, it's physically as well, because the two are so inextricably linked. If you're not taking care of yourself mentally, your physical health is going to go to hell. If you let your physical health go, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to make your mental health any better. Some things that come up for me is exercise. Even if it's nothing more than taking a break every hour or every hour and a half and getting out and going for a 10-minute walk or something, but just something to get you out of the zone in which you're in. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so sometimes if I'll have back-to-back, this is kind of funny. So I'll have back-to-back meetings, like a Zoom meeting or something like that. And we have this policy sometimes on our calls, we'll do a 10-second workout. And literally we'll be on a Zoom call like this, and we'll have everybody do a quick workout, some push-ups and like just jumping jacks or something. And there's something about motion that creates emotion, right? Like you once you start kind of moving the body, your physiology can change your mental state. And so yeah, absolutely, taking care of your body, eating the right foods. I think for a lot of us, our routines have been thrown off, and if you were used to kind of eating at the deli in the ground floor of your building or something like that, and now you're eating frozen chicken nuggets every night. Certainly what you eat is going to affect how you feel, and it's going to affect how you think. And so, to the extent that you can, try to come up with a different routine if your routine's been disrupted, for your exercise as well as your diet.
So this is Laura. Hi, everybody. I placed a link in the chat window too about a local yoga instructor that has all kinds of online resources available. She teaches daily through Facebook Live. She has 10-minute short type of things that really help your psyche and emotions as you go through this. And I wondered if anybody that's participating has some details or wants to talk about the loans available through the state and the grants available through the state for small businesses that could really help with cash flow over the next months. Is anybody in the loop on that could share a little bit?
Well, I can share this right now, and that is that the Maryland Department of Commerce is scrambling to get this whole program set up. They do have, if you go out to the Maryland Department of Commerce website, they have begun to populate the site with resources, and some of those resources deal with the grants and the low interest loan programs. The other thing is that the SBA has announced that all of Maryland now qualifies for SBA disaster relief loans and low interest lost business loans.
Chris, Tony put the link in the chat window for what the Department of Commerce is doing. Thanks for that, Tony.
Okay. The SBA has come out with and has announced their disaster relief program, and you can find that there are a number of links, and I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me right now, but with those, if you qualify, you can get up to $2 million for your business to be used as you deem appropriate. The interest rate is capped at 3.75%, and the term is negotiable, or I believe up to 10 years. But you do have to go through a traditional underwriting process. My understanding is that they are going to loosen some of those requirements going forward, the underwriting requirements going forward, but you still have to approach it as if you were going out for any other form of a loan. But they are going to do their best to fast track applications and respond to people, ASAP. Those are the things that I know of. I also know that Howard County is coming up with a loan and grants program, and I'm sure that most of the other counties are going to be coming out with something very, very similar. I just don't have enough detailed information right now to be able to share. As soon as we get it, we will put it out on the website and send out newsletter with the appropriate links.
I got a link from Anne Arundel Economic Development today that had some helpful links in it. I put them into a Google Doc and just made it shareable, but that's it there. I haven't had this just happened today, obviously, but it says that there's a Maryland Small Business COVID-19 Emergency Relief Loan Fund, and it's $75 million in loans of no interest or principal payment due after the first 12 months.
Yep,
that converts to a 36-month loan term with 2% interest rate. There's also on that list, there's also the Maryland Small Business COVID-19 Emergency Relief Grant Fund, which is $50 million that offers up to $10,000 for businesses for cash operating expenses for the first quarter of 2020. So yeah, there's a list there and some links, and I haven't had a chance to dig into those, but someone shared that link with me today, and I thought I would pass it on to the group.
So somebody else just put on there that the M&T Bank, and I think a lot of other banks are also allowing people to defer payments or pay interest only for 3 months. Definitely worth contacting your banks to try to keep cash flow down.
So now that we've begun to identify some of those resources, if any of you out there know of resources that we haven't touched on, please feel free to put the information and the links in the chat box, because we're going to be taking all of this and doing a summarization of the event and distributing as much of this information out as we possibly can in the next couple of days. So now we're sitting here as business people, and the unknowns, the uncertainties, the emotions that we're dealing with, the responsibilities that we feel. Ryan, can you share some thoughts about what it means to be a leader and a founder of a company going through the situation? And how do we as entrepreneurs position ourselves as being guiding lights for the company and for our, and by default, not only for our company, but for our vendors, for our customers and our employees, all of our stakeholders. We're really the ones that people are looking to set the tone and the direction forward. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions that you may be able to provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think what you said, Chris, I mean, you should eat last, in these scenarios. I think that was why you garnered the support of your team. You came in and said, here's what I'm doing. I'm willing to not take a salary until we get this fixed. And I'm going to work my butt off to make it happen. And gave them some options to let them know that you were thinking about the team. And in these difficult times, it can be it's the time to kind of rally around your principles and the values of your company, and then to immediately take actions to make sure everybody's as whole as possible. Whether that is, like you said, everybody across the board taking a pay cut or having to make some difficult decisions, or looking into these loan programs, or what you can do to bolster your cash position to make sure that you're taking care of your people. The other thing I would say is high level of communication. Making sure that you're communicating. So if you have stakeholders in your business, if you have a landlord that you can't pay, if you have employees, communicating at a high level with all of these people is going to go a long way. Let them know what's going on, and that will open up the line of communication, so you can work it out and you can get more data information and make good decisions.
One of the things that came up for me the other day as I was thinking and planning on our talk this evening is, sure, we're in a mess right now, but at least the way I look at it is embedded within every problem, situation, crises are the nuggets of opportunities. And whether that's an opportunity to take a new tack with your business or take a new tack personally, since we are basically sheltered in place right now, I was thinking about, well, okay, what can I do right now over this X period of time to improve myself or improve my position, whether it's personally or professionally? And a lot of people will take what I would call the casual route out, and that is, sit back, binge watch Netflix, and chew on the popcorn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a heck of a lot that we can do that would be incredibly productive and beneficial. Things like reading all the books and all the articles that you've been putting off because you've been otherwise too busy. Learning new skills, new software. One of my goals is to finish my Excel training over the next 3 weeks. Any thoughts and ideas that you might have about things that you're planning to do right now with the extra time that you otherwise might be out working on other things?
Yeah. So just for me personally, I think it depends on your situation. Obviously, if you have a business that you're invested in, it's probably going to be extra hours spent on the business and finding a way to take care of you and your team and your customers and stakeholders. And so to that extent, I think those needs are very immediate. So everything that you're focused on is what we call actionable and factual. So you need to be really bearing down on that. For me, I am doing that for my businesses, along with, I also am trying to be as helpful as possible to the community, and spending that time learning from others that have been through similar scenarios, listening to business owners that have really good solutions for improving cash flow and the finances in the business, listening for solutions on what we can do from an employment perspective, from a tax perspective, from the stimulus perspective, what kind of loans and grants are available, and trying to stay on top of that, and trying to organize the community. I think there's a lot of strength in speaking with other people that are going through similar things as you, and they may have just a slightly different angle on things that may affect your business. And so I think that's the best thing for me in my case in particular, which is to work on my businesses, do what's actionable and factual, and at the same time organize the community to activate and support one another.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is kind of throw it out to the community, those who are on the event this evening. If you have some thoughts, ideas, some information that you might like to share, go ahead and unmute yourself, and please feel free to be part of the conversation.
This is Tony Ferrero.
Hi, Tony.
Obviously, me being in the billing and collecting business, helping business with reoccurring billing and things like that, sometimes it's very difficult for people to ask for help. And it's when that lack of communication comes in, when you're having a debt problem, is when the problems start. It's when the consumer or end of the business does not communicate with us, or put it the other way, when they do communicate with us, they get the benefits and we work with them. It's the people that do not communicate is the problem. So I just suggest, if you have to call your landlord, call them. Even if you can make the April's payment, say, hey, April's going to be okay, but I'm not sure what's going to happen, in May. You just communicate and let them know how things are going, instead of just not paying and not communicating.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Anybody else?
Hi, everybody. I'm just putting a note on the bottom of my intro. I have a good friend that works Department of Commerce. For those that saw the press conference earlier, Governor Hogan, a lot of important material. I have, unfortunately, some of the hosts of the events where we all have known each other from may go under because the food restaurant, others can't, unfortunately can't function right now, but let's hope that's going to get better. But if anyone was focused on today, the Secretary of Commerce was on. I've got a contact for Victor Clark, who's one of the one of the deputy directors. I'm happy to make that intro for you. So just PM me privately. We're all in this together. But again, I included my other resource there. But again, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to participate. And just want to put it out there.
Thank you, George. Much appreciated.
Yep.
What I would like to then do is to
Chris, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason. Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know right now, I know you mentioned about focusing on today and then tomorrow, but as we all know, a lot of innovation, a lot of ideas, a lot of creativity comes about in finding solutions for crises such as this. And I just wanted to know what Ryan's thoughts were on some of the things that will continue to grow, as well as perhaps maybe something that people are not really focused on now that will be an opportune market to take be something formidable moving forward outside of the crisis that we're not seeing now. Just kind of if you had a magic 8-ball, what do you think things will look like once we turn the corner from an innovation technology perspective?
Sure. Yeah, man, if I knew for sure. Well, I'll tell you what I think we can. One thing we can do is we can look back at previous downturns and we can see what kind of businesses were successful in other recessions, and that might be a clue. So you can always, if you're not sure, you can always go back and look at businesses that maybe performed well in past recessions, and that might be a good place to start looking. I think we can probably say that the government is still going to be a buyer and still be around after this. So if you're selling to the government, there's a good chance that there's a market there. Healthcare, it's another industry. Don't think that's going away. And so if you're selling into healthcare, it sounds like virtual tools. So, I think I heard a couple people on the call earlier speak about a few products that, you know, have to do with virtual tools. I mean, just look at Zoom. I saw, you know, Zoom telecommunications company for the product that we're using now has been doing really well in this market. So things that can help people given the current situation and scenario, I think are good places to look, and just look at the tools and products and services that you're consuming.
I totally agree with you, but I didn't know whether or not you were going to touch on perhaps maybe finance and the in the cryptocurrency market. Just sort of curious with your background.
Yeah. So I think, you know, as far as like an alternative financial system, it is interesting to consider the possibilities in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. We'll have to see how that shakes out, and as it unfolds, we'll have to see how it does. It's still a blossoming sector, and so this is its first time living through a financial downturn of this magnitude, or really of any magnitude, and so we'll have to see how it performs and see how it lasts through this downturn.
Tony Ferraro also added to the chat window, telemedicine is probably another good industry that's very true.
Yeah, that combines two of them, right? Healthcare and remote tools.
Absolutely.
You know, yep. I know one thing, you know, just from a founder track perspective, we ran an in-person accelerator, and we do a lot of events, but last year we invested pretty heavily in developing our online platform, and we had some companies go through the virtual program last year, and we were unknowingly preparing for this. And so, you know, kind of in the spirit of kind of rolling with the punches and being an entrepreneur, we're leaning into that and going to find a way to help as many founders as we can virtually until the situation changes. So that's how we're kind of looking at it.
Where, Ryan, you and I had talked about that briefly the other day. What you're thinking as to when that virtual accelerator program may be available?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, we had a plan, but we got punched. Yeah, best laid plans. And so we're going to see how things develop here, and see how we can best be helpful. I know in the short term, we want to be as helpful as possible to as many businesses as we can. So we're just jumping on the front lines, helping businesses, and then also helping to develop the community and connect people with resources.
Ryan, how can people get in touch with you? How can they connect with the Launch Annapolis community, and how can they find out more information about the Founder Track program?
Sure. So go to foundertrack.com, and you can see a little bit more about our program and some of the past successes and what the program entails at foundertrack.com. And you should sign up on our email list, because as soon as we have news on anything, you'll get an email from us. And then for Launch Annapolis, go to Meetup. So you can go to meetup.com or just put Launch Annapolis into the search engine and join our Meetup group. And you'll be notified as soon as we have any events or any announcements on the email list there. And you can chat with me in there. I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on there. So send me a message and I'll connect with you there.
Okay, great. Well, Ryan, I want to thank you very much for participating this evening. It's been very educational. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And thanks to the Startup Grind community. And thanks for everybody getting on the line and offering up all the stuff in the chat and suggestions. And thanks a lot, Chris, just for what you do and organizing the community. I think it's really important at a time like this that we come together and support one another and be there to help each other's businesses as well.
Agreed.
So that being said, just a couple of things. You'll be hearing from us, the Startup Grind team, over the next couple of days about our ongoing twice weekly virtual events, as well as soon as we get more definitive information, we will start publishing that through our newsletter. We also have a LinkedIn group Startup Grind Columbia, and we'd love for you to go out and join the group because we're also going to be using that as another forum and platform for being able to keep the community together. And that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. It's been a great first event. I hope we didn't make too many mistakes, and we will be talking to you later on in the week.
Thanks, Chris.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Hey, Chris, Josh, Lara, do we want to circle back maybe tomorrow or the next day just to go through and post-mortem everything? You have to unmute, guys.
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't know if, is Chris still on, or did Chris looks like Chris dropped off, so that's probably what we're going to need to do.
Yeah.
But I just want to show you guys what my husband just delivered.
Nice.
Good husband.
I have to go check my front door.
To see if he delivered one to you too.
Yes. Hey, guys, great job tonight.
I think we did pretty well given our, lack of experience doing this as a team.
Oh, that's funny. My glass of water goes invisible this way, right?
Oh.
No,
Hey, I can do magic tricks now.
it's quality dad magic right there.
Great job, everybody. I'll wrap up the call, and then I'll get the video of this, the recording, probably within a half an hour, and I'll blast it. We'll have to probably set up as Dropbox. I'm sure it's a massive file, but I'll get it over to you guys in the next day or so.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great job.
Thanks, David, for leading us through this.
Yes, thank you very much, David. Very well done.
Great job. Seriously.
Yeah, this was great.
Take care.
Bye,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye-bye.